Game of Thrones test pilot. Possibly known even more than George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire novel series it was based on, the television series Game of Thrones was one of the most popular television series of the 2010s. However, there was actually an original pilot to the series that never saw a public release. There were obviously changes from the original pilot to the final series, such as casting changes, most notably the role of Daenerys, who was played by Tasmin Merchant in the pilot instead of Emilia Clarke. There was also some cut content as well, not making it into the final released version of the first episode, as well as a different intro. As the public never got to see this test pilot, information about it has been scarce, and the slow leaks that have come out have only resulted in a few behind-the-scenes photos, not even actual stills from the pilot itself.
For the Sesame Street Gang, it's the Cookie Monster protecting the goal, and out of the garbage can for this performance, Oscar the Grouch at center. Now facing off, it's Oscar the Grouch and Blackhawk Bill White. White driving the puck down the ice, on goal, with a terrific save by the Cookie Monster and a fast move to his left.
Chicago Blackhawks vs. Sesame Street. In 1975, the Chicago Blackhawks held a Christmas party, and at this party, an exhibition game was played. This game was recorded and broadcast by ABC News, and only reported on by them. The big thing I left out about this exhibition game was that the Blackhawks team was playing against Sesame Street characters. The game's story was wild as well, as the Blackhawks actually lost the exhibition game to the Sesame Street characters 3-2, but then they played against the Islanders later that day, aka an actual team of professionals, and they won that game 5-2. The Blackhawks that season would eventually lose to Montreal in the Stanley Cup, who would go on to win the finals. Footage of this event wasn't known to exist until 2011, and it was only bits and pieces of the match played as a Sesame Street promo during the Blackhawks game against the Bruins. In total, a couple of minutes of game footage are publicly available, with the possibility of the full game footage being released remaining unclear. Alpha and Omega Alpha Run. This mobile game based on the forgettable animated film Alpha and Omega was itself forgettable. While it's unconfirmed, the pictures we've been able to see make the game appear as a side-scroller, somewhat similar to Monster Dash, with very crude Genesis-esque graphics. If you bought the game through Apple's App Store as opposed to Android, supposedly there were 4 extra levels that could be played through those versions. The time trial mode, leaderboards, and the endless modes were also available through Apple products in addition to those 4 extra levels. The game was released in 2010 for a $2 price and at some point got delisted from the App Store. According to a comment on Fandom, this happened sometime before September 28, 2012. No footage has survived, and obviously none of the game's files have either. Pyramid arcade game. Pyramid was a 1978 arcade game developed by a company called Sankyo, and I bet none of you have ever heard of that company, which is partially why one of its games is being mentioned in a video like this. If you've ever played Breakout or one of its many clones, well, this essentially is a Breakout clone just with an Egyptian theme. There does seem to be various different graphics for each of the levels, but obviously it's clear that the gameplay was rather simple. There doesn't seem to be much info available about this game, and no one can seem to find a cabinet. There was a YouTube video featuring gameplay footage, but it's now private. Airmaster. Based on the decade-long running manga series of the same name, Airmaster was a series that had 27 episodes air throughout 2003. Toei planned to partner with Canadian company Geneon to release a DVD that would include an English dub of Airmaster in 2005. 3 of the 5 planned volumes of said DVD did release, and the other 2 volumes were caught in the crossfire of Geneon and Toei's divorce in 2006. This meant that the release status of the final 2 English volumes of Airmaster was up in the air, no pun intended. The casting director has said that all episodes did have an English version recorded, but obviously the final 2 volumes worth of episodes are lost in English.
From Wallingford, Connecticut, and from this food fair store, a part of the fastest growing food chain that features quality foods at low prices, It's time for Supermarket Sweep, the TV game show that travels to your hometown and lets you run wild through your supermarket.
Supermarket Sweep. While known for inspiring plenty of remade versions and clones, Supermarket Sweep began humbly in the 1960s as a traveling game show where contestants would identify the price of certain grocery items and, depending on the number they got correct, would be able to add to the amount of time they were able to grab things off the shelves at the end. The team that had the highest value of items in their shopping cart would return to the next episode in a Jeopardy-esque way. ABC has very little of any television material archived from before 1978, with game shows disproportionately being disposed of. Pretty much all the episodes are lost except for a few which have slipped through the cracks and have been uploaded to YouTube. Looney Tunes Space Race, Nintendo 64 version. Produced at a bad time, as in during the cutoff between console generations, Looney Tunes Space Race was a racing game featuring Looney Tunes characters, as if the title didn't give that away already. In 2000, the game was released for the Dreamcast, and 2 years later, the game was released for the PS2, but planned among these at an earlier stage was a Nintendo 64 version that never materialized. The game was announced all the way back in 1998, which was well within the Nintendo 64's lifespan. The game's development was tumultuous, switching between different crews, and this, ultimately, was why it ended up releasing so late after the announcement. By the time the year 2000 rolled around, it was becoming too late in the 64's console generation for the release on that platform to be a success of any kind, and because of that, it was cancelled. Eat Carpet. This long-running Australian series showcased quite a bit of short films in its run. From 1989 to 2005, short films created by film students and directors trying to break into the industry were a part of this series. And those short films could literally be about any topic, have any tone, or for that matter, have any purpose, as comedies, dramas, and even documentaries made it into the lineup. Sometimes all three in a single episode, filling in the 1-hour time slot. In 2005, the series was cancelled, and in its place, Shorts on Screen was another series that fulfilled the same purpose, and in its own right it had a long run, going on for a decade. There seems to be a lot of individual shorts here and there available on the internet, but full episodes are very hard to come by, and when they do, they don't even come close to amounting to the full 16-year run. In fact, no episodes after 2002 seem to have been seen anywhere. Rise of Nations 2. In 2003, Rise of Nations released, developed by Big Huge Games. It was highly regarded in the real-time strategy genre, and usually that results in a sequel. And while Rise of Nations did have some spin-offs, its planned sequel never saw a release. The original game was released in 2003, and an expansion was released in 2004, and the spin-off Rise of Legends was released in 2006, and after that it's unclear when this planned sequel would have released. There have been some screenshots released that were supposedly from Rise of Nations 2. These came from a Steam discussion post by a user whose account no longer exists. It's unknown how those screenshots were obtained, if they were real, and why the game never came out if those screenshots are indeed from it. Opinion. 2 years ago, in episode 12, I talked about this Kurt Cobain song. He supposedly performed it the night he wrote it for a radio station in Olympia, Washington. Until the 2015 release of the biopic Montage of Heck, that one performance was all that was believed to exist. But in that biopic, 12 seconds of a different recording of the same song could be heard, leading many to theorize about a possible lost demo never heard before publicly. But, in April of this year, that lost demo was found. It was uploaded to YouTube by a user in a Facebook fan group for Nirvana. There is still believed to be a 12-minute version, but the main search was for the demo that played for 12 seconds in the biopic, which has been found.
Well, congratulations. have one. It's a year subscription of bad puns and a makeshift story of concern.